If you're watching this later on, great. I just want to give a quick rundown about how this is all going to work. It's also going to be in the description, or maybe it's in my previous post. I don't really know how StreamYard works quite yet. If you're joining us live on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, feel free to leave a comment in the chat. We are happy to see you. I am Angel Strong. My friend Gianna Caloris and Sister Queen will be joining me, and we're going to be having a environmental controversy discourse. So the idea of this is that these perspectives don't necessarily reflect our personal opinions or our personal points of view. This is purely as an educational exercise, so everyone can make informed decisions on where they stand on important issues. So without further ado, here's Gianna Caloris.
Hey, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm so excited to be joining you.
So I want to give our audience a little bit of background on what we're doing here, if that's all right with you.
Yeah.
So again, let's be clear, these perspectives may not actually be our personal views. This is educational first and foremost. Gianna, you're from New York, so this doesn't impact you as much as it might impact me living in Nebraska, Iowa territory. So I don't know if you have a personal perspective on this. You might not even care. This is corn lover things. but
no, I definitely care.
We're looking at the traditional Sierra Club perspective. They've been really big on fighting against the CO2 pipeline here in Iowa. And Gianna's going to take that perspective. And then I'm going to take the perspective from the Summit CO2 carbon or Summit Carbon Solutions group. So real quick, what are CO2 pipelines? So this is the Summit Carbon Solutions current proposal. It is essentially taking a lot of the corn produced in the Midwest and putting up stations to create ethanol. Ethanol is one of the few fossil-based fuels like carbon, like CO2-based fuels that can actually very efficiently be carbon captured. Unlike oil refineries and things like that, ethanol is very easily carbon captured and carbon sequestered. Hi, Ralph. Nice to see you. And on YouTube, I'm glad people are finding my YouTube page. Yay. So now we're going to hop right into the discourse, and I'm going to let Gianna lead this conversation, and I'm going to be responding.
All right, awesome. So one of the first points that I wanted to bring up was the idea of eminent domain and how these CO2 pipelines are using the private land. And it's like we need it to be taken by the government via eminent domain to kind of take over those pipelines.
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is very interesting in this debate is that farmers and environmentalists alike have sort of joined forces against CO2 pipelines because of the issue of eminent domain. However, I'd also like to bring up, if we want a full, let's say, electrified society, we also need to have eminent domain to put down basic improved electric grid lines, as well as new wind farms and all of that. So can we really be fully against eminent domain when pretty soon here, to accomplish a bigger goal, we're also going to have to use eminent domain? That feels a little bit of a contradiction in a lot of climate discourse for me. The other thing I will point out is that unlike many, many pipelines previous, such as the was I about to say Nordstrom pipeline?
It's okay, I can't speak either today.
Too long with elections, I guess. But like many fossil fuel pipelines in the past, this is something that is part of development and part of construction. However, here, Summit Carbon Solutions has actually agreed to pay back the full amount for not only fixing the problems they cause, but also keeping our farms intact. And they actually have a very solid reason to do this because they are going through corn-based farmland, and their entire process is based off the idea of industrializing corn to make ethanol. So without corn, this entire plan just is moot, right?
And yeah, like going back to that, with like the corn production, it kind of just like keeps the ethanol in production when like we should really just be trying to avoid producing any CO2. And we have to like also look at the fact that like corn isn't the most efficient crop that like we could be cultivating. It's bad for the water quality and the soil sequestration in production. So we definitely have to keep in mind that like it's just not the ideal like way to go about it.
Are you okay?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Yeah. Gianna's just getting over a cold, so please be patient. Totally understandable. However, we are going to be using ethanol in the logical future either way. We need some sort of transition to a full electric economy, especially given that we have so much polarization. I was talking about yesterday on my reflection about COP27 is that there's so much political polarization surrounding climate change that realistically we need a sort of middle ground for that transition. I have to assume that it's better to be able to capture carbon and use carbon sequestration in the production of ethanol to make cleaner ethanol, as well as just make ethanol cheaper to produce in general, than to continue using fossil fuels until we can convince everyone that an electric society is best. There seems to be a cost benefit there and a net benefit specifically. The other thing is like, yes, corn is not as efficient, but it's also something we're going to be producing for the very long foreseeable future, especially here in the Midwest. Most of our crop production is based around corn, specifically for livestock feed and ethanol in particular. So even though ethanol for Iowa is the most economically productive reason to grow corn, back in home in Nebraska, that's not necessarily the case. Most of our corn actually goes to livestock feed. So it's not going to completely get rid of corn either. So do we take the comparative loss, or do we just say, hey, we don't care. We're actually not about making smaller steps. We just want the full transition immediately.
Yeah, definitely. Well, like another thing I just wanted to also talk about is how like these pipelines, they're like messing up the farmland, especially tilling. Tilling is a way to irrigate the marshlands into usable farmland, and it has a really major economic cost on the economy and the environment.
Just to clarify, tiling or tilling?
My bad.
Tiling. Okay. So yes, I understand that from the perspective of many farmers, this might seem bad because you're taking away the previous irrigation system of Iowa, places like Iowa, and I believe Minnesota's marshlands. We are not made to grow corn. We are not made to grow crops in general. We are marshland first and foremost, which is a wetland-based ecosystem, not conductive to growing anything outside of wetland-based plants. So one of the things that we do here is we insert tiling, which is a sort of porcelain irrigation system underneath the earth. However, is that the best way to be irrigating in the first place? And can we use this uprooting of a lot of that tiling as a way to move towards a better irrigation practice? I would like to see this first and foremost as an opportunity. And again, like I said previously, Summit Carbon Solutions has agreed to pay back whatever way they need in order to keep these farms in production. So if the farms say, well, we want to move to this more eco-friendly irrigation system, I see no reason why we can't hold Summit Carbon Solutions accountable for that as well, since they are, in their own name, all about carbon solutions. And if people are wondering like why we keep looking back down, we have this entirely like plotted out in like back and forth ways.
I like have terrible brain fog right now, so I'm like trying my best to like follow.
No, I'm doing it too. I don't even have brain fog, and I'm just like, okay, what is next?
Yeah, I feel that midterms have like completely killed every last brain cell this past week.
What a mood.
Or like 3 weeks. I had 3 weeks of midterms because there's like no organization whatsoever.
I can't imagine.
Let's see. So we can get back to the topics that we were talking about.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I was the one that messed this up. So I just wanted to talk about how it messes. No, where am I in this?
You're totally fine. While you're looking, I will just mention for a lot of people, like I was talking about with an all-electric transfer, yes, that is our end goal maybe, but how do we continue to get there, especially when it feels like a lot of the people that are for this pro-electric society are also dragging back on this idea of like, okay, well, we can't use nuclear power because that can be environmentally degrading. We can't use this type of water-based energy because that can hurt the environment and it can sequester water away from the natural environment. We can't use windmills because it can kill birds. And like all of those are valid criticisms. But how do we move towards a purely electric society when we're not willing to make concessions based off the people who may also want to move towards a more environmentally friendly society, but are doing so in ways that they think is more economically reasonable? And I think to drastically improve the electric grid, like I was saying prior, we also need to use eminent domain. So a lot of these things kind of move together in a sense.
Yeah, well, like you were saying, it kind of just de-incentivizes the transition to electric power, because if you're using this kind of like band-aid to like fix what we have going on, it's not addressing the major problem, and the major problem is the CO2 production and trying to minimize that. And if we're just leaning on these pipelines to like with their ability to capture the carbon, it's not a sustainable, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a sustainable fix. It's just a temporary fix, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, the idea that we need to shut down CO2 production altogether. And while I recognize that, and I see the idea that it can perpetuate our issues a lot here, one of the things that I think is also important to bring up and bring to the table is that a lot of people are dependent on carbon-based energy right now. We don't have the infrastructure in place to even start moving towards a full electric society. It's kind of why I keep bringing up these grids, these electric grids. I have to keep saying it because we don't have them.
Got to drill it in people's heads.
Got to get it in people's heads. And even outside of this discussion, I think that's so invaluably true that we need to be recognizing this more. And while we are recognizing it, we also have to understand that until we can get to a place where this is feasible, where this is able to happen, we are going to need to have a halfway point. So while I see this as not a band-aid, but rather a transitionary step, I do recognize that at some point we are going to have to do away with it altogether. And I think limiting the CO2 going into the atmosphere versus not doing anything is definitely the better step. I think kind of moving into our final point, and then we can just kind of chat for a little bit. I believe, oh, wait. Yeah. I believe it's standards for CO2 pipelines, right?
Yes.
And then I have something we can present with this, because
perfect.
This was something that was like very shocking to me as well. Okay. So for those watching, the images on screen is a previous pipeline in Sauterra, Mississippi, I believe. And it's a pipeline that ended up bursting and a huge CO2 leak came about.
Yes. And that's an important thing to bring up about how there is really no like standardized way for these CO2 pipelines to be built. And they're kind of like inadequate and unsafe in the long run because these emergency responders don't know how to deal with the CO2 leaks. They're not equipped to kind of respond to that sort of emergency. And it pretty much leads to a dangerous situation overall, like for the public, for emergency responders, and for like anyone in the surrounding area where these are built.
Yeah, and gonna step back from the discourse based right now. So I'm an environmental science major, specifically on a conservation of biodiversity and climatology track. And one of the things to know about CO2 is that it's actually heavier than air. What this means is that when it leaks, it will stay towards the ground. And since we cannot inhale CO2, it ends up with a lot of medical emergencies around the surrounding area. The photos you're seeing here of Sauterra, Mississippi, emergency responders, like there was hundreds of calls into emergency response, and most of them couldn't even get there because they themselves would have been without oxygen, and there was no standards for equipment of emergency responders at all. And I think that's a real danger here. And I think if the Summit Carbon Solutions pipeline does get approved, I think all of the surrounding areas where this pipeline is going to be, their emergency staff definitely need to get on having a sort of standardized way to respond in case there is a leak. However, back on the discourse, I also want to point out that CO2 leaks aren't uncommon, and theoretically, there is no higher risk of a CO2 leak from the future Summit Carbon Solutions pipeline than really there already is, because a lot of pipelines, from the Keystone Pipeline to those already CO2 pipelines that we have, all have a risk. Producing fossil fuels comes with CO2 leak risks. So we are actually not having any larger risk available perceivably than we already would. So it's one of those things like, do we use nuclear power when there's a risk that it could blow? Or do we continue to use nuclear power because it's super efficient and just try to put in as many regulations and standardizations to protect those in the immediate area as possible? So with all of that being said, we are going to, oh no, why is it not moving? We are going to move on to questions and reflection. So me and Gianna are going to kind of discuss a little bit about this subject. I think Ralph is the only one in our comment section right now. So if you have any questions about what we are saying here about CO2 pipelines, Ralph, feel free to leave them in the comments. I will get to your previous question after we do a little bit of reflection, I promise. But yeah, so Gianna, what are some things that you take out of this discussion-based discourse that you think are really important compared to someone like me who like had this in a lecture and I'm like, ooh, we should talk about this.
No, definitely. I actually um was waiting to say something like to like the last thing you just said about how everything has its risks. All of these like new sustainable energy sources that are like different from what we're used to, they're all going to have their risks. And I think that like what you said, the like most important thing from like any perspective, I think no matter what side of it you're on, I think it's all about like being properly prepared for it regardless. And, making sure that these kind of like I don't want to say like tragedies, but like, like things
Well, they
like
are
that.
tragedies. Like
Mhm.
CO2 leaks are definitely tragedies. I would use that word. I think what happened in Soteria, I think it was, oh my God, I want to say like dozens of people ended up in the ER. Like it was bad. Like some people are permanently disabled from this situation. I can't remember if anyone died per se, but I know a lot of people were grievously injured from it.
Yeah, and that all goes back to just making sure the proper protocols are in place where if something like this were to happen again, not like not as many injuries, or let's say if there were casualties, not as many casualties would happen. And I mean that's with anything, but especially in this case when it's such a controversial topic and you have people like for it and against it, the only way to kind of like ease people's worries like again that are against it is to be like, okay, like look, I understand you're worried about this, but like this is the steps we have in place if something like that ever happens again. um but yeah, like
And I think, and this is background that, we haven't like discussed here. I mentioned the Sierra Club at the top of this episode. However, I think I should clarify a little bit something very interesting that has happened here in Iowa, at least. So during the Keystone XL pipeline, Sierra Club and many environmentalists obviously were very staunchly against that. However, there was sort of a mixed feeling amongst farmers here. On one hand, they were like fully in support of the Keystone XL, pipeline going through their land because there was this idea that they were going to get paid back for it, which never ended up really happening. And then there was this even larger feeling that Keystone was going to overall be better for them because it was transporting oil and fossil fuel, which is important for creating fertilizer. So there was a lot of feelings there. However, one of the lessons that a lot of farmers seem to have taken away from the Keystone XL pipeline is that you shouldn't depend on the idea that you are going to get anything in return. So this is one of those unique instances where environmentalists and farmers have largely been on the same page here in Iowa. There's been a lot of calls from farmers for our governor. Oh my gosh, I just voted in Nebraska. So now I'm like messing up the governor's names. Our governor, Kim, I want to say her last name's Reynolds. I should know this. I only hear her name like 1,000 times a day.
no,
Quickly
you're
looking
good.
this up. Yes, Kim Reynolds.
Trust me, even with all the names in your head, I don't blame you.
So there was a statement made by Governor Reynolds, essentially like, I'm not going to let the government do anything in your personal lives. And a lot of farmers are like, okay, but you're letting the government take our land. So how about you stop that? And I think that is such a weird time to be taking this stance, if that makes sense. Because overall, I think, well, yes, there's some damage to land, a lot of damage to land. I'm not even going to say some because it's very significant. It feels like this is like the lesser of the two evils between now and Keystone Pipeline. So I think it's a really interesting dynamic to have the farmers so on board right now. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I was just like really surprised to find out that they were largely hands off for Keystone, but are super for stopping the CO2 pipelines. So that has been an interesting little coloring of all of this.
Ooh, that's interesting. I definitely did not know that because like New York, we don't really I don't know much about that, but
Yeah, these big city people not understanding the
I'm
minutia of
not
the
even in the city.
Midwest.
I would imagine. No, I mean I definitely know that like we have farmlands out here, but it's just like we're not like out in the open like area like that where you have all this space to build stuff. Like we don't have enough space for our houses here. Oh my god.
Versus me, like I go to school and I pass like 5 cornfields.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great. Also,
Meanwhile,
like
I
some
go
of
to
the
school
biggest
and it's like
windmills in
building.
America.
Hmm?
I also pass some of the biggest windmills in America because Iowa is the #1 wind power per capita state.
Sweet.
So
That's better. That's a better view than what I have.
they're not very pretty.
Oh, well, I mean, neither are the strip malls on Long Island, so it's okay.
Valid. However, I really quickly want to address because we also started a separate campaign to this. It's part of the reason why you're my first experimental guest on this style of live stream.
Very experimental. Sorry if I messed it
Very
up.
experimental. You did great. I don't know how people are going to feel about like talking about environmental controversies like on equal footing like that. That might be a no-go for a lot of people, but I wanted to try it.
You know what? There's a first for everything.
Yeah. So Ralph is asking if we need translations into other languages for our. It says Save the Bee campaign. I want to clarify this. This is more. How did I phrase it originally? Keeping climate protests 365 days of the year. So just trying to bring a lot of that energy and those signs to common everyday life areas to keep climate always in the conversation and always on topic. Right now, I am working on designs and I'm struggling a lot. so,
I'm not
you
creative.
know,
You're already a step ahead of me.
I am not like I'm a super like logic-based person. It's why I'm a STEM major. So like trying to be creative like with Canva and making posters, I'm like, eek.
I'm not gonna lie, like if you guys like saw what she's done on Canva, like I'm impressed because I couldn't do it. Like all your little infographics, I need to work on that. I should get better at that.
I feel like Canva is a skill. And when our introductory videos come out,
Yeah.
you'll also find out that like I've trained people at Casa Ruby, which is a DC Latinx homeless shelter. So one of the things like they needed help on because a lot of the people that work there are up in the generations, let's put it that way, was how to use Canva and like similar apps. So like me and my friends were volunteering down there for a day and we're like, how can we help? We were expecting like help with HIV/AIDS testing in a kitchen, something like that. And they're like, do any of you know how to use computers? Not literally, but like, do any of you know how to use Canva, Adobe, like things like that? And I'm like, yeah. So
Right.
I have a lot of experience. I think 6 years worth at this point.
Honestly, that's impressive. I'll give you that.
If I didn't have Canva, all of my posts would just be like random selfies because I do not have time to do anything past that.
Calls out all of my posts that are random selfies. No, I'm kidding.
Your posts are not random selfies. You have like all these cool posts. You have like a really nice theme, and I'm jealous because like I can't stick to
I have to do better. No, honestly, you're my Instagram inspo. So, guys,
See,
check out her
we just need
Instagram.
to share tips of trade.
Yeah, check out her Instagram because it's really good.
Also, check out hers because I feel like the New York or Instagram, there's like a lot of like, you can clearly tell when title holders have switched over, which I think is always like really interesting. So, because I love Skyly, she was one of my sister queens back in 2020 and 2021. So I think it's just like interesting to see like her Instagram versus yours, and just like that transition. Like, there's no transitionary period. It's just like Skyly's. I feel like if I had to like describe Skyly, it would very much be like not preppy in a bad sense, but like preppy. And that's like what her Instagram comes off as. And then yours is just like, yes, I'm cool. Like,
I just fake it.
You do not fake it. I've competed.
Fake it till you make it in this industry. No, I'm kidding.
She doesn't fake anything, guys. Come on. But no, I think the campaign is going really well. I'm trying to get my video put together for my Thankful Blocked local right now. So I've been a little bit slacking. So yeah. I'm hoping that we'll have the same thing. Yeah, I'm hoping that over Thanksgiving break, we will be able to like contact like local stores and places like that to see like if they want to put up these signs, if they'd be willing to like help sponsor the campaign. But I'm hoping like during that week I can get some real work done on creating these posters, because I'm trying.
I feel that. Aww.
Yes, go to bed. You have been wonderful. Thank you. See you in January. I can't wait.
I'll see you in January. Oh my God, I'm so excited.
Well, no,
we're going to see each other in January too. It's been a long time.
I just need to like fly up to New York, even though I have like no miles left. I have too many friends in New York. I want to see people in New York. You know, I would. It's expensive.
Yeah, I know. No, I know.
But I think this is a story about Ralph. Like, so in 2021 Earth USA pageant, like I was super busy. It was like my first time competing properly in Miss. And I was like running around like a chicken with my head cut off to like every event, and like never had time to like stop and talk to people. And he found my grandmother because he brought like a little orchid for me. And he's like, give this to Angel. So my grandmother like came to drop off my wardrobe, and she's like, and this like Filipino guy, like he looks Filipino. He brought this orchid for me to give to you. I think he introduced himself and everything. She's just like a little old lady who doesn't like it. Like she's just recognizing like, I think it's that Filipino guy from your Facebook page.
Oh my gosh.
And it was so funny. And I'm like, thank you, Ralph.
That is adorable. That's like the best thing I've heard.
Oh my God. It was so great. The orchid looked beautiful. He actually does really amazing on growing orchids, and that's a talent that I don't have.
I'm pretty impressed, because my mom got one as a gift and we just revived it. We thought it was a goner.
Yeah, I've been surprised how people revive orchids. I've never understood how that happens.
Oh, pure luck. That's what happened. We just Googled it, and pure luck.
See, I was supposed to take a botany class.
Mm-hmm.
I took entomology instead. And if you don't know anything about me, it's that you should probably know that I have entomophobia, which means that I have a lifelong fear of insects. So instead of killing plants for a semester, I decided to face my lifelong fear.
How'd you get through that? Are you still in that class?
Yeah. It's kind of touch and go some days, I will be honest. Like, I got to the point where I can hold an insect.
Alive?
Like, alive. And put it in my little bag.
They move too fast. I can't.
Like, so I think it was, so the first day of class, I literally spent half the day either screaming or crying. And other people in my class kind of felt really bad for me. So one girl who is phenomenal at catching bugs. I don't even know how she does it. She caught like a dragonfly on the first day of class. And if you have no idea what entomology is, like catching dragonflies is so hard because they have like 360-degree vision. So like, and they're super fast. So it's impossible. It is nearly impossible. Dragonflies and damselflies. And she caught like 2 on the first day of class. And she's like, I think you need this more than I do. And she handed me like a little bag full of like 7 bugs. And I'm like, 7 out of 45. I'm almost there.
Is your like homework to collect bugs?
But I was just crying. Half the people in my class felt bad for me. The other half were like, what is she doing here?
Yeah, why'd you sign up for this?
Because I didn't want to fail botany.
You gotta face your fears.
Yeah.
You're doing better.
Exposure therapy.
Exactly.
I've caught 2 wasps.
No.
And I've handled them myself.
They didn't sting you?
No. So there's actually a really neat trick. So when you catch them, like you keep it in the net and then like you tighten your hand around the net, leaving enough like around your actual hand area to protect you. And you put the bag up and carefully place the entire thing in and like slowly close the bag with still some of the net in it. And then carefully pull the net back out.
Okay.
Through like a tiny little hole in the bag.
I think I could visualize it, but
yeah,
that's still.
Oh, you didn't see the yellow jacket incident though, did you? On my Instagram stories?
I don't think so. I would have remembered that.
So a boy in my class hadn't caught anything like a wasp yet. And he found this little wasp's nest in the ground. So he put his net over it, and he's like, and he was waiting there for like 10 minutes for one to fly out. And he's like, darn, I think they all flew out already because he had noticed it when they were flying out. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, shouldn't there be like 5 that stay back to protect the nest or something? Because like, I'm thinking wasps. A lot of wasps will leave at a time because they don't need to be there. And they'll leave like 5 to 10. Pretty fair.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I'm like, you're sure it's wasps? He's like, yes. So I'm like, okay, well, let me just beat on the ground a little bit. Yeah, like 200 yellow jackets swarm out. And like, it was getting to the point where they were lifting the net off the ground.
Wait, I think I saw like, it must have been like I saw it the next day and like some of the stories like expired or something. So like I didn't see the full story, but I do remember seeing something. Oh my gosh. So that's the story.
Yeah, we were running from yellow jackets for the next half hour instead of actually catching bugs. And he lost his net. Like we couldn't retrieve the net at all because if we did anything to move that net, we were going to be stung. So we were kind of told to just leave it. And no joke, 20 years of teaching this course, my professor has never had anything like that happen. And guess who got blamed? No, I was not blamed. He was blamed. Very rightfully so. He told me all of them are out, and he told me they were wasps.
Yeah.
I feel like that isn't my fault.
No, it's not your fault. It's his fault.
Not like I'm the one that angered them or anything. Not like that would have been a smart thing to do with wasps either.
Yeah. Well, you angered them under the false presumption that he made.
Exactly.
So not your fault.
I'm like, he identified it as a wasp. I thought he knew what he was talking about. I thought he had paid attention in class.
Never assume your classmates know what they're talking about. Oh, that's the biggest thing I've learned in college, if anyone's listening. Never honestly, assume your classmates know what they're talking about because they're probably just as clueless as you.
Well, see, I am not clueless. Like I am a very like studious person and I can recognize a lot of the insects now and I can identify them very well. I just don't like catching them.
But no, yeah, understandable.
And it's like, there was another incident with this same kid where we were looking at larvae and like we were in the river turning over stones, like trying to get larvae and aquatic larvae and everything. And he found this huge one, and he's like, oh, look, this must be like this type of ephemerata. Ephemeroptera, mayfly larvae, Ephemeroptera. And because there's one that's like quite a bit bigger, but it's only about an inch or two. And it was like 3 inches. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, this looks like it can bite. And he's like, no, I'm sure. Like, it's just like the fake thing. Remember? It said it has like the fake pincer mouth parts. And I'm like, okay. So I helped him catch it. And then 2 weeks later, we start the Diptera unit. And we find out it's a Dobson fly larvae. And they will bite you. They are very happy to bite you. And I'm like, so I don't even have a Dobson fly. And I helped you catch yours at risk of my own health.
Now he's got to catch one for you.
We're not going back out. I think I'm going back out with a friend of mine. But the class isn't going back out. The first frost already hit, so there's not like a ton of bugs left.
Come to New York, it was like 75 yesterday. Just kidding, it was like 78. It almost hit 80.
Well, it's 70. It's supposed to be 71 on Wednesday. It's supposed to be 71 tomorrow.
Ooh, impressive. It dropped today though. It was like in the 50s today.
I think that's so bizarre. I don't like living in our post-climate change world. This is
Oh no, the weather has just been so weird.
I feel like it's super like growing up in Nebraska. Granted, I've always lived in post-global warming years. But I always thought it was super interesting that going from 30 degrees to 90 degrees was just kind of normal. Like it happens during the spring and fall seasons.
Wow.
And then like I moved to Iowa, and it was a few days ago, like our low was 21 degrees. Like we had snow on the ground. And then Wednesday's supposed to be 71.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like,
okay, it's not that bad here, but that's probably because like we're surrounded by water.
Yeah, we're getting the cold fronts that are heading towards Texas.
Oh my God.
I don't know how they're gonna. My mic is not staying where I want it to. That's like such a first world problem. It's like, because like look, I bought this like super cool expensive mic, like podcast mic, because I want to start a podcast, but that's what keeps happening.
Oh my God, that's funny. I was just talking about first world problems this morning too in my class.
See, okay. Again, like this is just the part of the show where we get to like bond and talk as sister queens. Hope this stays. Just hope this format stays. I hope I can like bring on different sister queens and like debate for half an hour, and then another half an hour just bond with people.
I think we should do like a second one, like a redo, so I could redeem.
I think you did great. Especially, okay, I will point out to everyone. So the topic of this episode, as you can see, all of this is coming from my class notes, because I'm currently taking climate change, science, and policy of the global era, which is an honors course at Drake. So it's like interdisciplinary, which who knows what that means at this point.
Yeah.
But this was just a topic that came up randomly in class, and he's like, oh yeah, this is on the ballot next week, so we should probably talk about it. Y'all go do your own research. Y'all go talk about it for a little bit. And like, I'll even bring up like one of the points that I saw get made on news shows and everything about this that isn't actually a thing. Like, this is not a possibility. But a lot of people were worried that the CO2 pipelines would end up being used for non-carbon sequestration. So to like transport carbon-based fuels, or be used for carbon capture of like proper fossil fuels like oil, natural gas, those sorts of things, which is not something they can do. Like, they can't change it now. And if these like, let's say that Summit Carbon Solutions like gets shut down tomorrow. They can't change the proposal, they can't change the plan, and the pipelines are not approved to do anything else with because they will burst and they're not up to regulation to be moving liquids like that. So that's kind of a non-argument in the first place. It's why it wasn't like given to Gianna at all, because from my understanding from my professor, it's just a non-starter. It's not a real thing. It's just more of abject terror. But
I felt that.
I'm like, well, it was one of the things that I actually brought up in class.
Yeah.
Sorry, that'll probably fix my audio a little bit. It's one of the things I brought up in class, and he's like, that's not a thing. And I'm like, so I like spent like 20 minutes researching this thing just to find out it is not real. It was great. But again, like,
no, this is like a pretty cool topic. Like,
yeah, I think it's something that's like off the wall, you know?
Yeah, because like if you don't know, like, because like you sent me like a bunch of like the information and stuff, and like I was like, wait, like, okay, like this is like interesting, especially because like you sent me like one side of it and then like you had the other side, so I was like, oh, like this is like an interesting take, and I was like, hope I could do it. Like,
yeah, so if you're like wondering why it seems like a little bit off balance of like information, it's because I had a full 2-hour class on this topic taught to me by an industry professional versus Gianna had my secondhand account plus whatever research she could scourge up in the great New York area versus like I live in Iowa. I can turn on local news and be told exactly what's happening. So
I did like my little research online, but like earlier today, like right before, because I was really busy.
That's totally valid. Like she got the talking points last night. Well, so like do not blame her for any of this. This is all my fault because I decided, I think on Friday that I wanted to do this and was like, Gianna, please.
No, I'm down for anything. I just like had no idea what to expect until we got on here. And she was like, Gianna's leading. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, that was my fault.
No,
but I was like thinking about it like prior and I was like, how do we do this if I lead? And it's like, there's not really a way.
Yeah. No, I get it. Cause like you had like the bulk of the information. So it wouldn't make sense for like you to start with the bulk of information and like me to be like,
so like the contradictory point of view, especially like, because like I mentioned, like a lot of what you were saying is like the Sierra Club traditional environmentalist perspective, which is something that as environmentalists, I think sometimes we get in our little echo chamber about. And I'll just say it like point blank, I still think I agree more with Sierra Club than the perspective I presented here. But a lot of that, again, is because that's the areas I spend a lot of time in, like my little environmental science bubble. So doing research and having an entire class period dedicated to discussing this and having kind of, I mean, we didn't have a debate on it in class. It was mostly our professor debating himself on it. I love him. He's great. He's so funny. But
I love professors that could do that. They just have like full-on conversations with themselves.
He was like going back and forth too, like cross-examining himself. It was great. I freaking love him. He's amazing. But he's also someone who, as long as I've known him, is like on the farthest side of environmentalism possible. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think if this is gonna like hurt. No, I think this is within our I think this is within our Earth USA contracts. He is very far left. Okay. Right? Especially because of environmental concerns. I almost feel like he'd be more moderate if it weren't for climate change as an issue. Mm-hmm. But he's also an environmental economist, I think is his official degree. So he has like a doctorate in environmental economics, a master's in economics, a master's, I think, in like ecochemistry or like biochemistry or something like that. So like he turned his doctorate into environmental economics. So super intelligent guy, like super smart guy. And he's very, very far left. So hearing him be like, yeah, I don't necessarily think Sierra Club is wrong, but I think they're missing the point, was really interesting to me. Just like, because he's part of Sierra Club.
Yeah.
He speaks for Sierra Club.
Mm-hmm.
Like he does a lot of that stuff. I don't know. I just thought it was very
to hear that coming from like an expert basically in his field, and someone who's like so knowledgeable and like involved in it, is like, but honestly, I like that. I like when someone can notice like the flaws in their argument, but like also still agree with their side. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but
see, I think one of the things that he kept coming back to that I think is his kind of hill to die on is some action is better than no action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which, like,
you said that earlier too, and I was like, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and I think especially to some of us younger climate activists, we recognize like it has to be all or nothing at this point, but sometimes don't slow down to think like, well, we can still get to all or nothing. Like we can still cut CO2 emissions down by like 90% today, right now, if we do this thing that is technically anti-environment, right? Mm-hmm. Because like one of the things like here in Iowa is like, you're gonna get so mad. You're gonna get so mad. Okay, I pay about $2.80 in gas right now per gallon because I have an ethanol-based car. Mm-hmm. So I can use a lot of our ethanol, and ethanol is really cheap here.
Yeah.
So, and my car, because like you can't get around in public transportation in Iowa, especially not Des Moines. Like it's bad. We do not have public transportation in an effective way. And that's very
here, like in the suburbs, like where I am.
Yeah. It's like, it's very frustrating. And what do you do other than have a personal car? So I'm very grateful that my car is ethanol based. But the other thing is like a lot of Iowa's tractors and farm equipment are also ethanol based because we produce most of the world's ethanol. We produce the corn for most of the world's ethanol. And that's like a huge deal. It's not even the greatest percentage of our corn that we're producing, but we produce the greatest percentage of ethanol. And I think that's just a huge deal in general. So here it's like really cheap. And if we can get that more throughout all of the Midwest and completely cut CO2 emissions, I think that's like great. Because let me look up the exact number real quick. But I don't think ethanol, like when it's burning, when it's being used in cars, actually produces that much CO2. It definitely produces like at least half of what like traditional gases do. I mean, it's just one of those things. Yeah. So yeah, so it's 44 to 52% lower greenhouse gas emissions than gasoline when used not only just like in cars, but also like producing it. So if you think about it, if we can get rid of the CO2 emissions from making ethanol, like that's a lot of CO2 reduction, like immediately. Especially like newer cars can usually take up to 50% ethanol. So some of them can take 100% ethanol now, and it blows my mind.
I was like, wow.
I wish my car I think takes up to 65%, 45% ethanol, so 55% gasoline. So I don't know. I think that like that's a lot. That is a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot. I would have to look up. I don't know what my car takes.
It'll usually be in your little like. For everyone who doesn't know how to figure out how much ethanol their car will take, hey, your instruction manual for your car should tell you. Or failing that, you can usually look up ethanol capability of my car, and there's a website that has the ethanol capability of like every make and model of car like since 2000. That's how I found out mine.
I'm looking mine up.
So yeah, if you're looking for a more environmentally sustainable choice, choose ethanol. Oh my gosh, we even have this, like there's this little sticker on all of our gas pumps that's just cleaner air for Iowa, ethanol. I love it.
I wish we had something like that. We have some bad writing on ours. Probably shouldn't have brought that up.
We also have little stickers that blames different people for rising gas prices.
Well, so do we, but except someone keyed it into the
New York.
They get rowdy here. They're rascals.
They have their. I just love Iowa's. Here's the thing about like when people talk about like Republicans versus Democrats and the environmental movement. Iowa's a very Republican state, but we're also like a very environmentally conscious state. Like, not even joking. Like, it is insane. You can have like the most hardcore far right Republican and be like, "Oh yeah, I think we should have more windmills," and they're like, "Yeah." It is so amazing. It's kind of like a whiplash.
Wow.
To hear people from other states complain about like Republicans being anti-environment and anti-climate change, and then be here and see like Republicans being some of the like the loudest voices about like environmental issues. It is so fun. I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, no, we're not as nice here in New York. There's like no one listens to each other's like point of views, opinions. It's so bad.
See, like, because I've volunteered with
but I love it here.
Climate Reality and just like different environmental organizations like most of my life. Specifically, oh my god, why can I only remember the acronym? That's great, love that. But there's like different climate lobbying groups, and there's one I volunteer with, and like they all say nonpartisan in every single state. And I've sat in on other states' meetings, and it's very clear everybody's from one party, specifically the Democratic Party. And then in Iowa, it's like half and half.
Mm-hmm.
And no one talks politics outside of climate change. And it's a masterpiece, honestly. Like,
see, but that's the thing. Like, it'd be nice if like more people could like find that common ground.
I don't think they find common ground in anything else.
Yeah, but you know what? It's a start, and climate change is like a really important thing to find common ground on. So like,
I think half of it is because we are like such an ethanol powerhouse, as well as just how much money our wind economy has saved us. Because it just blows my mind how other states are like, wind power does nothing, but then Iowa's over here like, our energy is like super cheap because we use mostly wind power.
Yeah.
And then we have like solar companies that are coming in now, and a lot of people are super excited about that because what if the electric company has to pay us next year? Like, people are super economically focused. It's so great. I love it.
Snaps. I like that.
I hope New York gets there soon.
Well, we have like at least like on Long Island, solar is like a pretty big thing, and you'll see a lot of people with solar, but it's just like so expensive, and with like the cost of living on top of the price of solar, you see that like a lot of people can't afford to put those solar panels in place. At least like they can't pay for it up front. And like, you know, even though like we know that in the long run it would, you know, be beneficial as far as like because now like the electric company here is like always raising prices. So it's like it would overall be beneficial, but it's like people don't have the money to like put up front for the solar panels.
That's really upsetting. I kind of imagine there might also be like, I don't know the climate of Long Island very well, but I know like in cloudier areas, obviously like it's not as beneficial and things like that. Like in Iowa, we're growing food, so we have a lot of sun and solar, so it's like pretty beneficial for us.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So
like
there might be like
out east on Long Island, we have like farms too, and definitely not as big because it's just like smaller land.
like
Well, like
smaller plot areas.
yeah, but you know, there's farms out there. If you go out there, like I can't even tell you. There's. I'm trying to think of what there is. There's stuff. There's corn. There's I don't know what else there is out there. It's so bad. That sounds terrible. It's literally escaping me. It's 9 p.m. So I'm like
I feel like I don't know half of what's grown in Iowa. Like I know we produce soybeans
ooh.
and wheat and corn. I don't really know anything outside of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, like out east on Long Island is a really big like farming area. Like there, you know, you'll find a lot of farmers markets. You'll find like people like go out there, especially in like the nice weather, like spring, summer, fall, even because they have like all the different kinds of things. Like they have like peach picking and apple picking and corn. Like I said, that because that for some reason my head is stuck on corn because we were just talking about it. But it's corn. Sorry, I need to stop.
I feel like it's so hard when talking about like farming because like on one hand I'm from agriculture states. I was corn fed, little corn fed Nebraskan. And it's like you can't change or reduce the agricultural community a lot without ruining livelihoods. Like that's just factual. Like 25% of Nebraskans, probably more than 25% realistically, but 25% of Nebraskans on paper are in the agricultural industry.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a quarter of our economy based solely on the production of corn, soybeans, wheat, those things. And it's like, is that the most efficient way to grow food? Probably not. Is it the most environmentally friendly way? Probably not. And it's very upsetting because it's like, what do you do at that point? And now like the CO2 pipeline, like this affects like both states that I fluctuate between. And it's like, I want to do what's best for the farmers on one hand,
mm-hmm.
and what's best for the environment. But on the other hand, it's like, to what extent? Like in my future, like I want us to have a fully electric economy. I want us to have a fully electric society, but we need those electrical grid lines to be through those farmlands. So if I say eminent domain completely is bad, well, how do we get the electric grid that we need?
Yep.
Because wind power is great, but how do we get wind power to New York where there's less wind? How do we get those environmentally conscious energy sources to New York, places like New York City and Chicago that can't have those big production areas? And like in North Dakota, they produce more wind energy than they have resource for. So it's actually a problem where they have too much energy and it's short circuiting their grids at times. So how do you transfer that out?
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of problems. So I can't say, like, in my heart, I want to say, like, the government should never take land from people because I think that's bad. But also, how do you avoid doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Just really complicated questions.
Yeah. And I mean, that was like what this whole thing was about. It's just like, Complicated.
Sorry.
Really complicated.
I'm trying to see if we have any comments on Facebook because I'm realizing that right now it's only showing the YouTube live comments.
No, you're good. I was just like, why do I hear my voice?
Yeah, I feel so bad. I just want to make sure that we don't have any, because I noticed my Facebook notifications, we have like people liking the stream that are not being shown. Like, it doesn't show any comments or likes on our stream, except for the 2 YouTube likes. So I was trying to check to make sure there were any comments on Facebook. I'm sorry.
Is there anything?
No.
Okay.
It'd be really funny if there was.
That would be really funny.
It would be
and awkward if we were ignoring people this whole time.
That was like what this whole thing was about. It's just like.
Is that what I sound like?
No. No. That's what you sound like coming through my phone speaker into my microphone, into your speaker.
No, I'm just saying my voice sounds annoying.
Your voice is not annoying. Stop that.
Definitely New York accent.
I think of a Long Island accent, but not
like. Do I have a Long Island accent?
You don't have like the traditional like New York accent.
I've always wondered when I talk to people. I don't think I have one, but I was just curious. I was like, I don't think I sound stereotypically New York. I don't even think I sound too stereotypically Long Island. Sorry, this is a huge tangent, but
I think like I can like slightly hear it, but I also think it's because I know you're from Long Island, so I'm like primed to hear it maybe.
Mm-hmm.
See, I know I don't have an accent because I'm from the Midwest and we are the pure voices.
All right. Well, no, that was a terrible attempt at a New York accent. Okay. I'm done. I'm just gonna stop.
It was like more Brooklyn.
Yeah, I mean, my mom grew up in Brooklyn, so
maybe that's where you got it.
Maybe I have a little Brooklyn spice. When I was little, I used to have a Greek accent.
See, that would be amazing, just to have like any European accent.
Yeah, but I grew up here, so it's like. Because I was like hearing it at home the whole time, so.
Don't take advantage of it.
Yeah.
See, when I was little, I used to put on like a fake little British accent all the time because one, I watched a lot of British telly, and two, I really wanted to play Alice in Wonderland when I was young, especially because Alice with the Looking Glass had come out like when I was 5. So when I was setting Girl Scout cookies, my friends would always say, "Put on the British girl." So then I'd be like, "Hello, would you like to buy some Girl Scout cookies?" And then people would flock to our table because of this fake little British girl.
This is our friend from Britain, from England.
Yeah, little British girl. I was so desperate to be European as a child, and now I look at Europe and I'm like, ooh. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Like, I should emphasize the fact that I started an international relations degree with an emphasis on colonization history. So when I say maybe not to European, it's because hashtag say no to the empire, guys. No empires are striking back today, guys.
Yeah.
I have nothing against Europe as a continent. I actually really like a lot of places in Europe.
I want to visit some places soon.
I do too, but with my celiac, I'm scared to go to places like Italy because...
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't even know what I can eat in Europe.
Low key, like... I was going to say Greece, but like they like to eat bread with a lot of their food. But I feel like it doesn't. A lot of Greek food just like if you just don't get it with bread, there's like no gluten.
Yeah,
but you have to worry about cross contamination.
I get like, granted, in Iowa we don't have many Greek restaurants. Iowa fixed that.
Yeah,
it's funny because we have 2 European restaurants, but we have no Greek restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
But like whenever I go down to Houston or Dallas or like anywhere to visit family or friends, I eat a lot of Greek food.
Oh, okay. I
And
feel
it's like,
ready.
because like tzatziki and everything like gives me life.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is more Mediterranean, but like
Yeah.
falafel,
Yeah.
best gluten-free snack. Protein, gluten-free snack. That's
Exactly.
rare. I do really love just Mediterranean and Greek food.
Like the cuisine, yeah.
Well, because I think it kind of started in DC. I was working under, again, I don't know if I can say the anyways, I was working for Representative Chris Papa's
Oh, okay.
internship, and he's Greek.
Mm-hmm.
So there would be like, I think there's 3 times throughout my internship, he's like, I'm going to buy the office lunch. He's like, here's a Greek restaurant, choose something from it.
I love that.
I'm like, this man. Like, he runs a Greek restaurant in New Hampshire, and it's like a really big deal.
I gotta go.
And it's like, it was really great. Those office lunches, they'll get you, man.
I may be biased, but I just like love Greek people.
Well, it's like, I don't see, like, from what I understood, because we were like right above AOC's office and right across from, what's his name? Don Bacon's office, like right down the hall. And like Don Bacon's my representative in Omaha, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, we were the only office that regularly had lunch brought to us. Like the other New Hampshire district representative staff would come into our office for food regularly because we'd have like leftover pizza and leftover Greek food and all of that. So we were kind of the cool office. And it's like, I don't see this happening in the other offices.
Well,
so I think it's definitely because he's Greek. Like,
yeah, Greek people, like their love language is food a lot of times.
I can believe that.
Yeah.
I can certainly believe that. Their appreciation language is food.
Yeah. Yeah, they're every like yeah. I guess that's
that.
a better way to put it. But like yeah, everything is food based.
Everything
pretty much. Like when I go see my grandma in Greece, she's like, eat, like puts food on my plate when I'm full. And I'm like, I'm so full, please. Like, and she'll just put food on my plate.
Okay, I think we're going to continue this conversation after ending the broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you guys all for joining us. This is way too long.
Yeah, I was like, this is getting long, but
yeah, I want to end it before 1:15 because then no one will watch it. So, but
true. And you could tell them like when they could stop watching. Just kidding. I actually don't know what time we started really going off.
Me either.
Maybe around.
I'll look through it. I'll probably repost it. It's fine. Bye. You can follow Gianna at Gianna Hope on Instagram.
Gianna
at Miss New York Earth as well. Yay. Bye.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course.
Just adding that on really quick.